Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Hello and welcome to the Board of Health for Monday, May 25th, 2026. I'm your chair, Ward 2 Councillor Cameron Kretsch, and joining us in chambers today, Ward 12 Councillor Craig Gassar, Ward 13 Councillor Alex Wilson, Member Chelsea Kirkby, Member Don Danko, Member Ryan Jansen, Ward 11 Councillor Mark Tattison, and Ward 4 Councillor Tammy Huang. I'm going to call this meeting to order because we do have quorum, which are 7. And please have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for today's meeting is our second item. Moved by Member Danko, seconded by Councillor Huang. Any amendments from board members to the agenda for today? I'm not seeing any. All those in favor of approving today's agenda as presented, raise by show of hands, please. Thanks, that's everybody. It carries. We're on to declarations of interest. Does anybody have a declaration of interest to declare today? Not seeing them raising a hand. If something should come up later, you can file the paperwork. We're on to item number 5, the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, which was April 27th, 2026. Can I have a mover and seconder to adopt those minutes? Moved by Councillor Tattison, seconded by Member Jansen. Any discussion on the minutes, amendments, errors? No, they're lovely? Okay. All in favor of the minutes by show of hands. Lovely minutes approved. On to 6, which are delegations. We have one delegation for today, 6.1. I'm just looking around to see if Evan is here or Evan is joining us virtually. I'm not sure. Evan Eubine from Environment Hamilton respecting. I see Evan coming up the stairs. Item 7.1, report BOH 25026A, black soot sampling and community engagement feasibility. I'm going to give Evan a few seconds by reading out the declaration about delegations, despite the fact that Evan already knows. Before we begin our delegation for today, members are reminded that questions to delegations are for clarification purposes and only and not for debate. So if you have questions, those are fine, but if you want to debate the delegate, you can do that outside in your own time. A note to our delegates, you have 5 minutes to complete your delegation. You'll hear a tone after the 4-minute mark, and then you will have an additional minute to finish up. And so Evan, whenever you're ready, you can begin your delegation. If you need a couple of minutes to set your presentation up, just let me know. Oh, it's already there. There you go. You're good to go. You've got 5 minutes.
Okay. Hello, Board of Health members and city staff. I delegated last month. I will probably be delegating next month as well, so I'll see you then. But today I'm going to talk about the report back on soot sampling and community engagement feasibility, and just give a few comments from Environment Hamilton's perspective. Oops, sorry. So background, you obviously already know this. This is the original motion as it was passed last March, to investigate how we could do, how the city could do some soot sampling in wards 2, 3, and 4. So I'm not going to touch on that too much. And then there are some updates, which leads to now. And then I just wanted to highlight a key reason for the motion request is that wards 3 and 4 are receiving an increasing number of complaints about the soot. So therefore, referring an increasing number of complaints to the MECP, but the MECP has not been taking action. And so this motion seeks to address that gap. And then the Hamilton Public Health Office highlighted some of these prior testing that was done in their report. In 2006, testing was done. Samples were collected on 3 different days, and the conclusion of that report was that much of the pollution could be attributed to the industrial facilities in the area. And in 2024, some more testing was done. 54 samples were analyzed. 16 received detectable concentrations of various compounds. I wasn't sure if this report was ever published. I saw there was a motion to get it published, but honestly, I was trying to find it. I don't know what the result of that was. In any case, in 2024 and 2025, University of McMaster did a study called What's the Grime? And based on some of the results they've presented, they've been able to differentiate their samples from soot that's coming from industry and things like traffic. And they found that as you move closer to the industrial area, the content of the soot is more consistent with what you would expect to be coming from industrial emissions. So what information is lacking from this prior testing is that soot samples haven't really been investigated for specific compounds such as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and certain metals. So that's a thing that could be improved on and what this motion could potentially address. Some comments on the feasibility study that has been proposed. The air quality testing, I'm not super sure how useful that would be. There was a proposal in the report to sample for 3 days. If you have irregular conditions on even just one of those 3 days, it would heavily skew the results. Like a 3-day testing period won't really tell you much. Also, 8-hour samples were proposed, and I'm not really sure why. I know the standard in the Hamilton Air Monitoring Network is usually 24-hour period. The sampling method is not very well defined. So for example, they talk about canisters. Usually canisters are used to sample volatile organic compounds or gases. So not really sure what exactly is being proposed to be measured. And then they don't define which pollutants specifically will be measured. So I understand the report is kind of just an overview, but it would be good to know this information before moving forward. And then for the soot sampling, some good things to know would be how are the sites selected? How will they be constructed and set up? How is the timeline chosen? It's honestly not clear what the timeline is. There's a phrase in the report saying that the integrity of the samples is dependent on pre-existing conditions. That can be controlled for. And it's also not clear how long samplers will be left at their locations. So in previous testing, samples were taken from 1 day. It could be better if it was left out for a longer period of time. And then, yeah, there could be more details as well. So in conclusion, if $120,000 potentially is being spent here to help residents figure this stuff out, there might be a better way to allocate those funds between the things that are proposed in the report. And it would be good to have some more details before moving forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any questions for Evan? Councillor Huang, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation, Evan. Just a question around, all 4 options in today's report are very different tactics. So in your role as a community organizer and as a community listener, what is missing beyond what you said in your presentation? I feel like there's a community engagement aspect that might be a little bit missing here. Can you give us a touch more information as to what the community might say about this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the language is pretty technical, but I think the community wants to know what the soot is that they're experiencing, right? And so for the air quality piece, I don't know if that will really do that. For the soot sampling piece, sending samples to an accredited lab for testing and results, that could be a useful piece of information that residents have said they want to know and could know. So yeah, should more of the funds, for example, be directed to option 2? That might be a better way to do it. The other thing I just wanted to mention quickly is that to actually help residents in these wards, the pollution from the industry has to be better regulated. And so I know there is also a notice of motion on the agenda, and there could be a decision made on that environmental compliance approval that the motion addresses before next meeting when that gets discussed here to vote on that motion. And because residents are going to continue advocating for this regardless, you know, passing stuff like that is helpful regardless of a decision is made by then or not.
Thank you. My second question through your chair is a question around what would be, because you've been looking at a bunch of these like sort of testing, sampling kind of studies. So, and because we also have the What's the Grime that you also did mention, where do you think that we could best utilize our resources to get to that core answer of what's in the soot, fallout, whatever? So what is your sort of ideal sort of study look like?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think, you know, city staff are pretty equipped to give recommendations and potentially work with the third party who drafted the report to, you know, make an allocation. Especially if, you know, there's discussions with the laboratory that's going to be doing the sampling. They would have good advice on, you know, here's the best way to collect the samples so that we can do our testing effectively. And then also obviously community members who have been involved already doing some of this research at whatever, you know, whether it's McMaster or wherever else, I'm sure they would be able to give good input and come up with a more comprehensive thing than I can give you right now.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. And next up's Member Danko.
Thank you so much for the delegation and for the specific questions that you're looking to have answered before a decision's made. So I just wanted to clarify, what I think I'm hearing is that air sampling may not be the most useful thing to answer the question that residents are looking for, which is what is in the soot? Thank you for nodding. And I had a similar question around how might we best spend resources to answer the question that we would like answered. So just for clarity, it's really around that gap around polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and doing testing for that. And so if you could just speak a little bit further around the need for more information about the sampling methodology. And I'm wondering if that also then would relate to sampling in a way that helps us identify the source of the soot, which we think we know what it is, but with some kind of identification of locations that are spread out in a way that we could determine soot density or something of that sort. Would that be helpful as we look to seek an answer to our questions?
Yeah, so through you, Chair, in the previous testing that was mentioned in 2006 and 2024, to my understanding, workers went out on a day and took a sample from somewhere in the community, and then that was sent back for analyzing. It could potentially give residents a better idea of what they're dealing with if a sample was collected over a longer period, especially if their main concern is what is in the sample, because if you collect it over that longer period, there's more for the laboratory to analyze and measure. And so you could get actual, detectable measurements rather than just, potential traces of this compound. The other thing is that, based on what I've read from the previous testing, is it looked at coal-based compounds, so coal, coal dust, coke, but it didn't look at some of the more detailed compounds, so the hydrocarbons and certain metals. And the reason for that is the more you test, the more expensive it is. So that's just a gap that exists, and it could be helpful for residents. Well, it seems like residents in the area are interested in knowing that.
Thank you very much. I don't see further speakers on the list at this time, so thank you for your delegation.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
At this time, we're going to have a mover and seconder to receive this delegation. It's also a chance to ask questions to staff if people wish to. Moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Huang. Before we move to receiving any questions of staff on this delegation specifically. Nope, don't see any. We can do it on the report anyways, just making sure in case there was something specific that was brought up. On that, all those in favor of receiving the delegation by show of hands? That's everyone. Thank you. We're now on to our items for information. And we're going to put items 7.1 to 7.3 on the floor and then deal with 7.4 separately. Can I have a mover to put 7.1 to 7.3 on the floor? Moved by Councillor Tadison, seconded by Member Jansen. And we'll now go and see if there's any questions on any of these items, 7.1 through 7.3, before we receive them. Councillor Huang, go ahead.
Can we get an overview of 7.1 very quickly, please?
If it's very quickly, absolutely, yeah.
Good morning. Through the chair, Matt Lawson, Acting Director, Healthy Environments Division, while Director McDonald is away this week. As the report before you includes technical information concerning materials identification, sampling, and analysis, I'm pleased to provide a brief high-level overview of the report at this time. Further, we are joined by Mr. Mahabub Alam from Pito McCallum Limited. He is here virtually. Mr. Alam is with Pito McCallum Limited, who is the certified professional consultant that was retained by Hamilton Public Health to prepare the proposal detailed in the report for the Board of Health's consideration and approval. The report provides an information update to the Board of Health's consideration toward further direction in response to earlier approvals of the Public Health Subcommittee and subsequently the Semi-Autonomous Board of Health concerning a project to sample and analyze material commonly characterized as soot in City of Hamilton wards 2, 3, and 4. Pito McCallum has provided proposed options within their report, 2 detailing environmental sampling and analysis plans, and 1 detailing a complementary background monitoring plan. Each of the proposed options includes project costing, which is identified in Appendix A of the report. And a little bit further on those 2 points, I think if Councillor Huang's question about the overview, so option 1 provided by Pito McCallum speaks to monitoring air quality related to the wards, and option 2 speaks to collecting 22 particulate matter samples throughout wards 2, 3, and 4. Option 3 is the background monitoring proposal, and option 4 is a comprehensive option which combines option 1 and 2. So it's doing the air monitoring and the particulate monitoring together. And those are the options that were proposed with associated costing. Hamilton Public Health staff, just a note as well, Hamilton Public Health staff has met with Board Chair Cameron Kretsch and Vice Chair Dr. Emil Joseph, as well as Ward 3 and 4 councillors Narinder Nan and Tammy Huang, related to trying to better understand their expectations concerning the community engagement component of the earlier motion. Based on the feedback and the information and expectations that were shared with staff, Hamilton Public Health has proposed a targeted communication strategy for wards 2, 3, and 4 should the Board of Health elect to pursue one of the options. And more detailed information concerning this can be found in the analysis section of the report. At this time, our team and Mr. Mahabub Alam are available to speak to any further detailed questions regarding the options provided if I haven't provided that to this point.
Thanks very much. Back to you, Councillor Huang.
Thank you. As all 4 options have been presented in this report are very different, and I do see that your recommendation is for option 4, which is an amalgam of all 4 of those options. It's a bit of the Cadillac version of everything, right? So as we had that little sidebar conversation, you talked about it being almost 2 separate sort of ideas, one of which is an air sampling, which is different from a surface level soot sampling. And so I wonder if you could just dig a little bit deeper and share some of those concerns that you had, particularly because identifying that direction is going to take this particular work in several different directions. So I wonder if you can just help us with understanding some of the challenges with what you're seeing in front of you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, I'd just like to point out that it's not necessarily a recommendation of staff to pursue option 4. It's noted as a comprehensive option in the consultant's report that it will give you the most up-to-date information about what is being identified when that sampling, if it were to happen. So doing the air monitoring and soot sampling is the most information gathering option that is presented in that report. Speaking to the point about the differentiation is, it's a point in time collection. So if any sampling were to be approved and directed, it would be done here in 2026. And when we think of the samples that have previously been collected by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, that was collected in 2024 between the months of March and September, October. And at that time, there were some media reports related to a sticky, greasy type of film that was collecting and had been observed and reported in wards 3 and 4 mainly. One episode being St. Christopher's Park, where our staff on our team had followed up with the park staff as well to request, sentinel surveillance on their behalf. Like, if this happens again, please notify our team and how frequently it's happening, because we'd like to notify the ministry to go out and collect some samples. So those events also resulted in a very time-compressed number of complaints to the ministry's office, which they responded to by collecting those 54 samples. And I think mainly in May and October or late September of 2024 is when most of those reports were identified. That is slightly different, I believe, than the constant fallout that happens in the lower wards of 2, 3, and 4 due to the proximity to industrial activity, combined with all of the modes of transportation that the wards are subjected to, in that the 400 series highways, the marine terminals, the rail yards, and the heavy industry. All of those sources will create a fallout of pollution that over time, we've heard community express their concerns about those particles and how they create a visual din and a dirty surface ever accumulates. So one is a constant fallout of particle, but I think that in 2024, there were episodes where it was a little bit more unique, where this sticky film substance was falling out. So to me, the staff, we've discussed this many times, is the goal to try and find source apportionment for that sticky, smeary, really dark substance that was identified mainly in 2024. And there have been previous instances of it as well in prior times, but or is it to really analyze what is the constant fallout? Because the two projects could be looked at separately, but they're both related to air quality, and they both will deposit down. So that's the distinction between those two matters that I see in the challenges of what exactly are we trying to find out the most about. In the end, taking particle samples will provide additional information. So we can take the direction from the Board of Health about which to the extent that you would like to pursue further sampling in those areas.
Thank you for that. I have comments later, but I think that my question is, do we need to make this decision today? Could we potentially push to the June 22nd Board of Health to have this matter be raised again I feel like I need a little more time to explore these options with public health staff. Because this agenda item was released to us on the 19th. We are seeing it now on the 25th. I wonder if there is an opportunity to perhaps just share with me the time frame or the timeline of how we have to make this decision today, through you, Chair.
Yeah, procedurally speaking, we can defer whatever we want, but I'll ask staff if that's going to cause some kind of problem.
Through the chair, not to our identification. We'll take the direction of the board as directed. We can go on the timeline that the board wants.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to go now to the next speaker, if that's okay, Councillor Huang. On to, just as a procedural note, right, if we do decide, or the vibe in the room is we wanted to defer this, the only people that can defer it are people who have not spoken to the item, so I'm just going to put that out there. Next up is Councillor Nan. Take it away.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to staff. Thank you for the report. Just a few questions and follow-up, and definitely have ideas on to Councillor Huang's point about deferral, which I'm not sure meets our community's needs. Could staff comment to which recommendation would enable us to have the most accurate picture of the impact of the fallout as it relates to human health?
Through the chair, yeah, I believe that the comprehensive option to Councillor Nan would be the most comprehensive. You would be getting air quality results. Again, it's a point in time. It's only a 3-day sample collection for that, and it's a timed average for 8 hours. There are continuous air monitors in the North End as well. That information, if done, could be looked at and assessed for corollaries to see if it was similar. When you're looking at that data and you're also collecting the particulate, you're going to expect to see the same things. So what is in the air will come down and settle eventually. So it would be option 1 and 2 would be the most comprehensive of what is potentially impacting the health of the community.
Thank you. So recommendation 4. And then could you comment on the point in time data and the potential for a longer period as mentioned by the delegate?
Through the chair, the point in time data is limited in that it is just a point in time. It won't be continuous air monitoring to see if something were to change after the 3-day of air sampling, then it would not be captured within that canister. However, we do have a network of air monitors within the Hamilton Air Monitoring Network that both the ministry as well as the staff within the Health Hazards and Vector-Borne Disease Program do review to identify concerns. So the usefulness of it is just what you're collecting during the time. You may see something, you may not see something. And so I'm not sure if this is getting to exactly to your question, Councillor Nan, about the limitation that the delegate spoke to, but it is limited by time. And so if more time were to be requested, it's the assumption that the cost would definitely drive up for more monitoring.
Yeah, and I guess through you, Chair, what I'm trying to get at is connecting the most comprehensive recommendation with the ability to have the most comprehensive data to give us the results that would actually give us the ability to meet the community's expectation here, right? So if there's a perception that 3 days of data collection at point of time may not be sufficient, or there's an ability, perhaps, yes, with more resources, to have a more comprehensive sampling period, would that in turn then correlate to the ability to provide more comprehensive data and outcomes to our community?
Through the chair to the councillor, the the information that we do get from the current air monitoring capabilities within the Hamilton Air Monitoring Network, as well as the 3 Ministry of Environment air monitors, does provide quite a bit of information about concentrations of the main chemicals that will impact the health of the community, things like PM2.5 and polyaromatic hydrocarbons. If we were to go, the benefit of doing this type of modeling, or monitoring rather, would be to take the actual monitoring devices to a specific location within Hamilton. And so where you're monitoring through the Hamilton Air Monitoring Network, those are fixed stations. So the air monitoring that would be done as part of this proposal would be collected at different locations where monitoring is not typically done. However, once something is in the air, it becomes an externality, and it becomes subject to meteorologic conditions where wind will blow it about. And so that's where a lot of what's done in environmental compliance approvals and the way that the ministry reviews, permits to be issued for emissions is to do modeling. And so, we look at the average amount of exposure that somebody usually gets to certain chemicals through modeling. This monitoring would potentially support what we might already know. It's almost a validation exercise, if you will.
Thank you. And then through you, Chair, appreciating the component that's dealing with air monitoring, I think the area where we've heard the most concern is about the fallout and fall down, not only on people's private properties, but specifically within city properties. Recently, the report and communication that we've had to close Powell Park Community Garden as a result of the fallout that has landed into the soil that is tested at agricultural rates. And out of an abundance of caution, we've closed that facility and said to residents, don't grow your food in this soil. And that has actually kind of heightened the fears in the community that existed previously. It also served as validation to our community that they're subjected to unknown toxins in their environment and community. And they're turning to Councillor Huang and myself and Councillor Crutch and saying, how can this work of this motion or this recommendation help us alleviate our concerns and fears? So from that perspective, could you talk about the fallout sampling locations, limited to 3, and how we might get a better comprehensive picture as a municipality of the prolonged impact of this fallout? Would community gardens make sense to be something that public health monitors going forward from this perspective, given that benzoidopyrene, I can never say the right chemical composition, but the one most linked to cancer-causing diseases is now in the soil of community gardens in the city of Hamilton?
Through the chair to the councillor, with respect to the community garden issue, there is, given the legacy of industrial activity as well as transportation within the city of Hamilton, I would say that it would not be surprising to have many soils in parks and areas of the city that would have elevated levels of certain contaminants, specifically with reference to lead in Powell Park. That's a very old neighborhood where the streets in that neighborhood have been around for decades, and one of the main contributors to environmental lead in that neighborhood would likely be due to exhaust deposition too from leaded gasoline, even back from the 1920s all the way through to the 1970s. So you're going to have high levels of lead in much of the soil. What might be different, given today's context, is how deep is it in the soil, and is it accessible to exposure to individuals who may be harmed by it? So with respect to the garden, I know that garden was 2012, I think it was established as a community garden. And at the time, there was a barrier put in place and topsoil was put onto it, built up. Over time, that mixing would have happened. As the gardeners are using the garden, they might be digging deeper, not aware of how much new soil they're putting into it, but the mixing will occur. And within the realm of making sure that community gardening is safe, many proponents of urban agriculture will propose that raised garden beds will, if you start to adopt a practice of, let's assume almost a universal precaution related to contamination of soil is, let's assume that there's some contamination here and let's just be safe about our gardening and put in clean soil with a barrier in between the rest of the garden. Over time, perhaps what you're speaking to, Councillor Nan, is over time, and I'm not sure what that time frame should be. There could be information within the literature I'm not aware of how often would you want to check the soil after, say you establish a new garden and you've got your clean soil and you got a clean bill of health. How long after that should we be checking what's in the soil given deposition and fallout over time? So to that end, we certainly could help look into that to try and find an answer for those practices. But I think that if community gardens were to adapt a healthy policy of raised beds and making sure that the soil is healthy and usable at the outset, there is a way to manage these. There are excellent resources as well from the National Collaborating Center on Environmental Health about urban agriculture and how to grow fruits and vegetables in urban industrialized areas that will still be healthy for the individuals to eat.
I appreciate the comprehensiveness of that response, Chair. Also appreciating that I'm out of time and do need to come on for a second time, only because the question that I have as a response to the thorough answer is, so in context of this report, in context of residents' concerns, in the context that this new information came forward as it relates to the community gardens, sure, happy to move a second motion or another motion entirely about a proposed schedule for soil testing on city property for community gardens, given the unique impact, right? So appreciating the global standards and the conversation among the associations that are looking at urban impact to community gardens, we're coming back to Hamilton, right? And we're coming back to the context that this report is about, which is some communities are disproportionately impacted due to proximity to industry. And so with that knowledge, then happy to table that discussion for a further motion, Chair, but I'd like to come on for a second time to talk about the community engagement portion of the recommendations. Thanks.
Okay, on to Member Kirkby.
Thanks so much for the information that you've shared so far. I just have a couple questions. One's a bit more specific. So you mentioned that when the air comes down, like all the air will come down and then we'll be able to sample on the ground or on objects. Is there anything that wouldn't be able to be sampled there, just in terms of analyzing whether the air quality component is an important component? Is there anything that wouldn't come down that you would need to test in the air?
Through the chair to Member Kirkby, the sampling being proposed by Peter McCallum is mirroring the same type of analysis that was performed by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, with the addition of certain parameters, polyaromatic hydrocarbon benzoate pyrene, as well as lead and nickel and some other metals. I may ask upon Mr. Mahabub Alam to provide comment to Member Kirkby's question. If Mahabub, are you there? Okay, I think Mahabub, I saw his name earlier on the agenda there, or on the screen, but with the, if you can clarify again, please, Member Kirkby, are you looking for what metals or what?
Not the specifics.
Are you asking?
Yeah, no, just if anything would be missing from the sampling of, like you mentioned, that everything would come down, so maybe all you would need is to sample the, do like the samples on objects or on the ground, but is there anything that we'd miss if we didn't do the air quality testing?
No, the particulate would also be sampled for those same chemicals of concern that would be sampled in the air qualities, as like the polyaromatic hydrocarbon, the nickel, the lead.
They'd all land on the
metals.
ground. Nothing would evaporate or not be available in the sample on the.
Yeah, there's
what I'm
solid
wondering.
materials, so
Yeah.
yeah, they would, what goes up must come down. And so the gravity, and over time, these would deposit in places if they have enough weight. So this is where it gets into something like PM 2.5 as a chemical of concern. It is very light, it is very small, it is a byproduct of combustion, and it can travel great distances because it is so light. The heavier you get, like particulates that are 10 micron inside, or TSP, as it's also known, total suspended particulates, those are heavier, and those will fall quicker to the ground. PM 2.5, from a health consideration, is much more injurious to health, given that it can get deeper into the lungs and can cause more concerns within body systems, as opposed to PM10, which is a larger particle, will get high percentage of PM10 is thankfully captured by our body's immune systems and mucosal membranes that trap it, and doesn't enter our body into the bloodstream like smaller particulates do. So if things have a molecular size, we will see them on the ground coming from the air. You will not see things like gases on the ground, so sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen, things of those that can still impact health. They cannot be sampled from the ground. But what I was hoping for Mahaboob to reinforce is the notion that the air quality sample, or the air quality sampling, is being performed to say, if we saw it here, we should be seeing it also there, and they're only looking for things that they know would deposit over time. They wouldn't be looking for gases.
Okay. And then, yeah, I just also wanted to say that I do also agree with, needing a comprehensive review of the impacts of health as well. So whether that's included, like ensuring that the data that we're collecting draws those links to the health impacts. And you mentioned that this is a bit of a validation exercise. So just want to, I don't know if it's a question, but to ensure that the report would include, or would the report include recommended actions that, both that are kind of outside the control of the municipality, but also ones that, we could take on as a city, as public health, in terms of addressing this issue, once we have the results and know what needs to be addressed specifically.
Through the chair to Member Kirkby, could you please rephrase the question in terms of the impacts of, you're looking for information about the impacts of the contaminants?
Well, I just think if we're going to do this report, we need to ensure that it includes what the health impacts are from what we're seeing, what's being identified in the results. And then from that, will we have recommendations that are very clear around what we can actually do about this to address the health impacts? So there's going to be things that are likely outside of our control, but perhaps it's advocacy or other ways that we can influence. And then what can we actually do? What can public health do? What can the municipality do to address these issues as they're impacting health? So just drawing the links between the results, once we know exactly what's landing, then what do we do from there?
Through the chair to Member Kirkby, yes, whatever contaminants may be found in any type of sampling, there can be information provided about its potential to impact health. What is very challenging to do is to understand how much anyone at any given time is being dosed with it. So a contaminant in its presence is not, it's not beneficial to our health to have lead exposure to people, but without understanding the exact dose that somebody is being exposed at, it's very hard to predict whether or not they are going to have their health impacted, or if they will be able to, if their body will be able to accommodate it if it's a lower dose. Dosage is important in terms of toxicological assessment, but theoretically, all of these contaminants present a risk. If they are in the environment, they could be exposed to an individual.
Thanks very much, Member Kirkby, and now to Member Danko.
Thank you, and through the chair, just sort of following some of the line of questioning, given we already have this network of air quality testing, and we have information that correlates with what we'd be looking to collect here, and the focus seems to be on understanding what is the fallout, as mentioned, is it possible to just correlate our existing data with the new particulate fallout sampling and analysis so that we could, allocate resources to extend the length of the sampling time? We could do more robust sampling, perhaps more robust analysis, perhaps further locations in addition to what were proposed. What would it take to perhaps consider an adjustment to where funds are allocated for testing?
Through the chair to Member Danko, if I'm understanding your question properly, you are asking where I'm sorry, Member Danko, could you please repeat the question?
Sure. I'm just wondering what information would we need, and what would need to happen to understand if we wanted to use our own air quality sampling and allocate additional funding towards the particulate sampling over a longer period of time, perhaps more locations. What would we need to do to understand what that option might look like?
Through the chair to the member, I think if I'm hearing you're saying if we don't do the air monitoring and we do additional particulate sampling, the consultant has proposed in their report that additional sites above the 22 sites that are identified at a cost of $34,750, additional sites can be done at an average cost. I believe it's just around $1,500 per site, but I will verify that. So additional sites could be provided. It would be the board's discretion of how many sites in total. And I'm sure that working with Peter McCollum, we could get a sampling plan for those. In terms of the timeline it would take, that could also be adjusted to be either faster or drawn out over time to show seasonality, if you will, at different times of the year. I guess the bottom line is it's all possible. We could do additional particulate sampling. There are some caveats there, though, to just point out that because we go to a site or because the third-party consultant would go to a site to perform sampling, it does not guarantee that any information will come back that will be of use to our understanding. So just to recall, 54 samples the Ministry of the Environment collected. Most of those samples returned trace or non-detectable limits of certain things. And of the 54, 16 did come back with detectable concentrations where the laboratory was able to actually determine a concentration on the ground of a sample. So even though we would be collecting additional samples, if more were to be chosen of the 22, it doesn't guarantee that the result would come back with any analytes identified in it.
Thank you. And through the chair, the other part of the question is around extending the length of the sampling time to increase the likelihood that we would have a sample that would demonstrate more than a trace amount of particular materials that we are looking to find. Can you help me understand, with the current proposal, what would it look like to increase sampling time? Not doing 3 samples at different times, but actually collecting the soot or having the collection apparatus out for a longer period of time. Thank you.
So through the chair to Member Danko, if it's particulate matter sampling, there's no apparatus. Okay. It's an on-site collection using a brush you're trying to actually find small particles. You're scooping them into a collected area. You're using a razor blade to scrape a surface to collect those small particles, and then they're placed in a petri dish for transportation to a laboratory. So there is no, for the particles themselves, the sampling, there is no monitoring device that sits out there. I will point out what you're speaking to there is an element of a research study that is ongoing in the city of Hamilton by Dr. Sarah Styler from McMaster University, the What's the Grime study. So those methodologies involve using substrates where fallout continues to deposit. So if you just picture over time, particles coming down and settling. They're settling on media, glass plates and glass beads. Typically was the first round of the What's the Grime study. And then after a time, those media are taken to a laboratory and using microscopy looking for densities and concentrations. And I think the second phase of the What's the Grime study is going to get into analyzing various analytes like metals and actually doing lab testing to see how much concentration of those chemicals exist on the media. I think, unless you have a further question, Member Danko, related to the air quality, staying out there longer, like if we had air monitors that could be put out there longer, it is possible, but I'm not sure that the cost of that would be favorable. The 8-hour sampling periods are done so because it is cost efficient for moving it to a very specific location versus having it electrically powered, sitting there all the time, continuously monitoring, which is what we have as part of the Hamilton Air Monitoring Network.
Thank you. I appear to be out of time.
Thanks, Ron. Now to Member Jansen, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Very quick question through the chair. So I would support the most comprehensive option here, option 4. I'm just wondering if staff might be able to speak to any possible efforts towards cost recovery from some of the key industrial emitters in the area. Thank you.
Through the chair to the member, I'm not exactly sure how we would go about that cost recovery for that purpose. Happy to take any direction from the board related to that work, but I'm not aware of how we could go about that.
So just to clarify, there's no historical precedent for cost recovery for some of these assessment options. That's never been done in the past?
Through the chair to the member, not through my time in my over 23 years here have we cost recovered any of that type of work. There has been in the past certain partnerships related to airshed modeling that has occurred where the Hamilton Environmental Industrial Association has come forward with $125,000 and the city matched that price to have an airshed model developed in 2016. However, cost recovery has not happened on any type of project like that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much. And now we're on to Member Safi, who's next on the list. And I don't see you up there, Member Safi, but if you want to go ahead.
I'm curious.
Not seeing you or hearing you.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah.
you.
Just a comment on the fact that the pollution impact on Hamilton residents and especially maybe the area down. And we, as a pharmacist, I purchased data about different diseases around and their index related to other Ontario areas. And I'm sure that many of us are not surprised. We have double indexed Ontario average when it comes to COPD and asthma, as an example. And I think involving clinics like Firestone, the one that deals with cases of COPD, as well as asthma, would give us more ideas about the real cost of pollution and how it impacts our residents in the city and how we can correlate it with the cost of like monitoring and screening this all the time. So it's more of a comment and a suggestion. And if there's anybody who wants to comment on this, that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
If you want to ask a very specific question, Member Safi, that would be helpful, but I think I can ask staff to comment if you don't have a question.
Yeah, no problem. It's all good.
Okay, thanks. And moving to Member Chung.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. Question through the chair. I just, I kind of understand that, you know, certainly the first objective would be to understand the composition of the particulate matter and air quality. Question in terms of the sampling data that would come from this. Hypothetically, with the Ministry of Environment and the City of Hamilton already having these monitors in several locations through the city, what additional utility would us setting these monitors in other locations bring in terms of convincing the ministry that there's truly a problem? So hypothetically, if all of our detection does come back positive, would that be convincing for the ministry to enact change in some way? For example, bringing further monitoring to those areas, or just kind of trying to get a sense of how convincing this data would be if it were to be hypothetically positive.
Yeah, notwithstanding the fact that the ministry is not in the room, if staff have a sense of whether there's been any historical practices where this has encouraged the ministry to set up monitoring, it would be useful to know, if you know.
Through the chair to Member Chung, it's a good question. I think that the ministry is definitely interested to understand if any work were to be done here, they would be interested in what the results are showing. And if there is an exceedance of any of thresholds or values that are identified through air monitoring, I think it would motivate the ministry potentially to look further into it. Thinking back to some other examples in different wards of the city, if we go back to the GFL third-party air monitoring example, it was when the ministry decided to do some a mobile air quality survey in September of that year, that they identified certain exceedances of thresholds. And so that warranted further exploration. That was their own monitoring program that found evidence of elevated thresholds. But because that information was observed and disclosed, then it warrants further investigation. So I would like to hope that if any decision made by this board to approve any air monitoring identified that there were exceedances of above a value of concern or a threshold, that the ministry would take some action to additionally investigate.
Thanks. Did you have any other questions, Member Chung?
No, that's helpful. I think, I think part of it was just understanding, certainly there are limitations in comprehensiveness in testing, which are obviously directly related to costing, but helpful to understand that if there were positive or red flags that arose, that it would kind of trigger potentially further action from the ministry.
Thank you very much. And now we're on, before we go to second time speakers, I'm just going to pass the chair to, I guess I have my choice today. I'll pick Councillor Huang. And just for a couple of comments before we go to second time speakers. And my understanding here, I'm listening to what you're saying technically, and I understand what you're saying technically, and what you're saying sounds technically proficient to me. At the heart of the matter for residents I speak to is really wanting to understand, just in a more basic way, how this is going to impact their health, if we're going to be able to get results back that are going to help us to help them understand things. I think one thing you said earlier kind of underscores where I'm at with this, which is residents should expect that there's going to be contaminants in their soil in the lower city, essentially, right? Residents should expect that there's going to be contaminants in their air in the lower city. And that's a really unfortunate expectation people should have. Right? They shouldn't have to have an expectation that the community they're living in has contaminants in it, and they don't understand what those contaminants are. And so I think we have some historical information, some of it's anecdotal, some of the information is point in time. I think what we're trying to get at here is it's clear and obvious, and again, I'll say this, just drive down Burlington Street and look at the condition of the homes on Burlington Street, and you'll see, just from the appearance of their homes, that they're certainly dealing with more fallout than other areas in the city. So I guess the question we're having is a bunch of things. Yes, it's about the grime, I think, that people saw. Sure, it's about that. Yes, it's about particulate matter that fell in the community garden. Yes, it's about particulate matter that people are just casually picking up on their children's play equipment. It's also about the air quality, and it's also about, all these things are about how industry is impacting these communities. I think everyone just wants a clearer answer about what the impact looks like, right? So I guess what I'm asking is, after this is done, are we going to have any clearer of an answer? Are we going to be able to provide information to residents that says, you know what, based on some modeling and studies we've done in 2026 as a benchmark, we can now use this benchmarking to move forward and continue to evaluate this on an annual basis? And then perhaps produce a community report saying, here's where industry is impacting, here's where it's not. Actually, this is safe over here. This isn't safer over here. I would avoid this activity. How are we going to end up with something like that at the end of it? If not, I think none of the options make sense, because I think we need to get to that and get to that place where confidently, right, as a public health organization, we can just tell the public things like, it's safe for you to do things here, or it's not. And then to sort of deal with that. We have no ability to advocate right now to the province. So can you help me with that? Because that seems to be the thing that's missing from the conversation at a simple level. Complicated technical proficient answers are helpful. I'm looking to be able to speak to residents.
So through the chair, the question that was just asked, which is, are we going to be able to do a comprehensive analysis of Hamilton and say, based on this study, or on a piece of Hamilton, based on this study, an area of Hamilton, what the baseline pieces are, what the health impacts are, and then measure that repeatedly over time is a different question than we were initially asked to look at. And so the question was about validating the results of what was happening in that area from what MOECP had produced previously. And so when we talk about then taking this and looking at this over time as a baseline, and whether, what happens over time, could we find transmission sources? When I hear that as the question, I think of a much bigger project than we have before us now. And I'm turning to Matt just to verify in terms of thoughts. I think this is a good start to that question. And I think that's what I was hearing as, and I'm sorry, but I'm seeing the look of dismay on the chair's face. And so I need to stop and ask, is there some question you have for me?
Well, no, I'm going to let you finish, then I'll make my comments. Go right ahead. Finish,
Okay.
please.
And so back through the chair, this is a good start to look at what does the Hammond Air Quality Network already provide us, and what would additional samples provide us from an air standpoint? How representative? Can we find people who want to have, be the sites to host this kind of sampling? Because that in other studies has been a challenge. And how much could we look at, will they want to be a sample site over time and give us that information? And then when we look at soil versus, deposition, I'm also aware of there's a difference between soil and what's depositing at the moment, because we have historical contamination from infill that has happened as well into those areas. And so when we look at soil, some of it is through, what's deposited there, some of it is through what was infilled there. And so if we really want to look at a comprehensive analysis of that over time, for me, that looks like something bigger ultimately than what this starts with. It is a start, but that to me is a much bigger project ultimately. And I'm just going to turn to Matt and ask him, or to Bart, Dr. Harvey, and see if there's anything they want to add.
Through the chair, to the councillor, to the point, I agree with the comments that made by Dr. Richardson that if the effort is to do a comprehensive health type of analysis from what's coming out of the industrial stacks, that is a much different project than the original work that was motioned here about the black soot investigation. But to answer or to comment and provide an answer to Councillor Kretsch regarding the question, we live in an industrialized community and there are emissions in the air. They will deposit into the soil, and the closer we live to those emissions, the greater the chance of being exposed to those contaminants are. The reality is yes, we would like to have it cleaner. That would be the regulator, the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. In terms of understanding what the actual cumulative outcome of all of this is. Some of the best information that we have available to us would be to look at the Community Health Status Report that Public Health had published back in 2024, where there is a modeled number of premature deaths due to air quality. The bottom line is that we can't tell an individual what their individual risk is, but if there's community concern about contaminants, by and large, the airshed is attempted to be managed by the ministry office, and that it is not the level of hazard where it's constantly above where you would say it's a high level risk that you need to shelter in place, but is it potentially impacting your health? It depends again on your dose and how much you're getting exposed to it. If you never leave the north end and you don't venture out anywhere over time and you get exposed to that air quality, yes, it's going to give you a greater exposure to certain contaminants that may impact your health.
Thanks. I think that answers my question. Yeah, part of it is dismay. Some of it's just a concentration phase, Dr. Richardson, not to worry. So I think that what I'm a little bit concerned about is that when we were having these conversations, I mentioned these things previously. So I just want to say I did say all these things when we were having the conversation around this motion. I did say these things in our meeting and conversation. And this isn't me just bringing it up for the first time. So that's why I'm asking, because when I looked at this and looked at the outcome, I was missing that piece. If we do need to measure more broadly or have a greater project, and this is a good start, that's just helpful information to have. Like, that's the way I want to understand how to approach what's in front of us. If what I'm approaching in front of us is this is a start, right? Great, then I can at least set residents' expectations that this is a start, we're measuring this specific thing, and that if in order to do this, something greater, we need more resources. I'm hoping also that what will happen is we'll get some more information to be able to make that decision, because right now, the Ministry of the Environment is doing some part of a job, right? And legislation tells them you must do this job, they're doing the job they're legislated to do. There are many gaps in the job. And so the questions residents have can't be confidently answered is the problem. When we have these conversations, everyone uses extremely potential language when they're talking about this. There's not certainty around this kind of thing. We can't provide answers to residents. And when you talk to residents that way, they just say to you, look, I just want to know if my kids are going to get sick. I just want to know if, this is changing, right? Because I understand that we have an industrial legacy, but that industry changes. Someone could move in their house in 2010, understand a certain thing to be going on. Things could get worse in 20 years for them, but they don't know. So these are the kinds of concerns people have, is that they accept a bit of risk knowingly. I think most people, when they move to an area where there's industry right next door, I think everyone cognitively understands there's industry next door. That may have an impact. But as it changes over time, is it worse or better? When they were moving in, they didn't get a report that said, this is exactly how your health will be impacted. So at some point in the future, I'm just looking for us to get there. I understand we can't do that today, so appreciate the answer and giving the context to me about where we are and what we're trying to do. On that note, I'll take back the chair and turn it over to Councillor Huang, and then we have Councillor Nan.
Just a question around what is our process today, because this report is actually on as an item for information, despite the fact that there are 4 different options, none of which are actually recommendations. So technically there is no decision point today. So what is the activity that we are trying to do today?
Yeah, the activity is, this is like an information report we've received at other levels and other places and council and elsewhere. This is a kind of information report that's sort of suggesting if you want to have a motion, at least you have some language here to be able to put one forward. And so what staff have done is provided options for us, including language for motions. If someone here would like to put something forward, also, we did ask that there be options provided in this report so that we could have something to look at. I think we would have come here today and it was just an information report saying what potentially could happen without any concrete options and costs. I think all of us would have been saying, well, what are the concrete options and costs? So they're in the information report so that people, if they wish to make a motion. Also, if people feel like, look, we've got a piece of the picture, we need some more time to think about this, might want to talk to staff, might want to talk to people from the community who are stakeholders or organizations, we can defer this till the next meeting. This is an ongoing issue. It's not something that's going to be resolved today, but also I understand the need and want to move forward. So that's really before you and before us as a committee, and that's my best answer to you.
Thank you. My second question then is, should we move forward with any of these options? They are costed. So that's not necessarily included in the Board of Health budget. So where does the money come from?
technically it comes from council at this point. I mean, there's a lot to be discussed about the Board of Health budget in general and how legislation works and what financial powers we have and so on, but we've set our budget regardless for the calendar year. So asking for more money would have to come from the place where the money comes from.
Got it, okay. So Board of Health Committee members, my hope is that we will consider a deferral because I feel like there's still a lot of outstanding questions. But I know I've already spoken twice on this matter, so I'm not able to move that deferral. But and I also recognize that Councillor Nan also has a couple more questions before we ask. But my hope is that I will leave it in the hands of committee as to how we might want to move this forward. Thank you.
Okay, and now we'll turn to Councillor Nan. Take it away.
Thank you. So circling back on community engagement, as indicated, Chair, so through you to staff, appreciating the outline that's there. I guess I'm just so much more of a, like I function hearing outcomes, like what is the outcome you're aiming to achieve by doing community engagement? Because what I read here sounds and looks and structured like a community, or I would say a communication strategy, period. So if I could just get a little bit more clarity, there's reference to seeking contribution and input from community members. There's indication of looking for or providing an online forum for questions. I guess I'm just looking for a little bit more detail here. Is that an open-ended process that you're just looking for residents to share anything? How might we be able to use this as an opportunity to articulate our residents' experiences to date and also have meaningful engagement?
Through the chair to the councillor, happy to have meaningful engagement if understanding accurately what that entails. What the discussion that has occurred to this point through with Jocelyn Strutt through the Engage Hamilton group, as well as her staff, and with the councillors who have originally moved the motion, as well as member Joseph, and this communication strategy that's detailed in the report would be a forum of sorts where voices and experiences could be shared should the community like to do that. In terms of what the meaningful engagement part is, I would like more clarity perhaps from the councillor about what she sees that to be, because we're happy to work that into and even incorporate that in potentially about what type of engagement is being sought. So that form would be, people could provide their details about lived experience. They could provide details about where they've seen Black Soot over the years. They could voice questions if they have it about, I would like to know what potentially could this do to my health? That's that same question. The troubling part of answering that for anybody is that we can't give them any guarantee about how it will impact their health. We don't know. But based upon certain chemicals that we've identified or any of the objective evidence, we can give a summary of its toxicological profile, and it all depends on how much you get exposed to. But from a point where what do we do about it after we've done the sampling and they've shared their stories, what's the next step? That would be a matter of sharing information with the Ministry of the Environment, Climate Change and Parks, and to continue to advocate to say that residents in the city would like to see some tighter controls on pollution, and perhaps related to the notice of motion aspect that Councillor Huang is bringing forward about site-specific standards locally. If the desire is to try to have greater regulation around environmental compliance approval in the city.
Through you, Chair, just to clarify, the Phase 1 kickoff project announcement, bullet 2 says encourage community contribution and inputs. The bullet 3 says provide access to online forum for questions and project updates. And then it goes on to say, being able to respond to questions as they emerge and concerns. I guess I'm just looking for more detail. It sounds very open-ended. Is there something that public health is seeking from our community through this engagement? What outcome are you aiming for in this process? Are you seeking to document people's lived experiences? You mentioned storytelling. Are you seeking to document specific kinds of contributions and inputs? Therefore, what are they? And then the third one being appreciating online openness is actually really important because we don't know until we receive, and that is part of the narrative that I think can be beneficial for public health to be able to articulate as a result of some of the components in this strategy. So just looking for a little more detail. Thank you.
Through the chair to the councillor, the portal was an idea that came up in our discussion with member Joseph that gave an ability for people in the community to provide information. And in terms of us seeking, like public health seeking what we're seeking through engagement, we are just trying to take the direction of the board. So it was the board that requested that engagement occur. So to what level engagement occurs is still the board's discretion, and additional information about expectations related to engagement can be provided to us to help us in our understanding to work toward that. I don't know if that helps clarify that, Councillor.
Thanks. Councillor Nan's indicated that she has no further questions at this time, and we'll now turn to first-time speaker, Councillor Tattison.
I'm just going to move that we defer the report to the next meeting and let the councillors do their homework with staff.
Okay, a motion to defer is on the table, and that's to the next meeting. I need a seconder. Councillor Huang is seconding the motion. The only debate on this is about the instructions, and the only instructions are that it happens at the next meeting. If you have a feeling about the timing, I'm happy to hear from you. Otherwise, we will go to electronic vote on the subject of deferring this to the next meeting. I'll let you know when that vote is up. That means everyone should be logged into their shiny e-scribe, and sometimes the first vote can take a little longer, and if it doesn't work out perfectly or your e-scribe is malfunctioning, you may indicate manually and I'll announce it to everyone. And the vote is now up.
Member Safi, are you in favor? Member Safi, I need your votes, please.
I think we'll just mark member Safi is absent this time.
So it'll be carried 10-0.
Okay, thank you very much. We indicated that member Safi's vote was a thumbs up. And one moment. I'll turn your microphone on for you if you don't mind. Just a moment. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Councillor
I've been
Nan.
waiting for the vote to show up on my computer for eScribe. I haven't been able to digitally vote, and it also doesn't indicate my vote on the screen.
Okay.
So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nan's also in favor, so that's 11-0, I believe. Yep, I'm seeing that that's true. So I know Councillor Huang is out of the room to hear, not to hear this, but at our next meeting, we'll have this come back at that time, and I would ask if people have motions or amendments, that those are made public and circulated. I know sometimes we don't always do that. What happens is if it's an amendment, then you just bring it forward on the floor and you put it on the screen. I'm asking actually not to do that this time around. If you have an amendment or you want to make a motion, make sure that that's circulated well in advance and it's actually going to be put on the agenda properly so we all have time to look at it. So thanks for that. We'll now move on to the next part of our agenda. Just a moment here. 7.2 and 7.3. Are there any questions on those two items that are also being received at this time? I don't see questions on those, so we already have a mover and a seconder to receive 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3. And since there are items to be received and one's being deferred, we are just going to do a motion by hand for 7.2 and 7.3. All those in favor of receiving them? That's everyone. Thank you. On to 7.4, Program Update Series Healthy Babies, Healthy Children, BOH 26019. I'm going to call upon Michelle Bursma, Manager for Healthy Babies and Healthy Children Program, to provide the Board of Health with a presentation on this item. If anyone wants to introduce the presentation or introduce Michelle, go ahead. Otherwise, Michelle, you can take it away. It's up to you over there.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Just very quickly, so my name is Julie Prado. I'm the Director of the Healthy Families Division and Chief Nursing Officer. So just noting, this is the second program update in a series, and I know Dr. Richardson gave you a bit of an explanation at the last Board of Health around the program update series. So yep, just going to hand it over to Michelle Boersma, who is our Healthy Growth and Development Manager. She'll provide the presentation and certainly open to answering any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Wonderful. And thank you, Julie. And good morning through the chair to the Board of Health and those tuning in today. As Julie noted, my name is Michelle Boersma. I'm the manager for Healthy Growth and Development with Hamilton Public Health, and I'm pleased to be here today to share with you some information regarding our Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I will share with you information regarding the program's mandate and need, as well as some key activity highlights and outcomes, and some ways that the program continues to improve to serve its clients. Next slide, please. The Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program is a mandatory program for all boards of health in Ontario and operates under the guidance of the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children protocol. This is published by the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services and is also referenced within our Ontario Public Health Standards. I will also note that there are no anticipated changes to this protocol with the draft standards that are yet to be released. The purpose of the program is to optimize healthy growth and development for newborns and children in the early years, and also to reduce health inequities for families receiving services. Research shows that early child health and development influences long-term health outcomes over the life course, and therefore programs that support families during these critical early years is key for achieving optimal newborn, child, youth, parental, and family health. Next slide, please. This is important in Hamilton as community health indicators do identify some possible vulnerabilities related to the health of pregnant individuals, infants, and children in the early years. On this slide, we can see that in Hamilton in 2023, nearly 30% of pregnant individuals reported concerns with their mental health. This is an increasing trend and higher than the rate in Ontario. The mental health of parents is important as it can influence the health of their babies through possible impacts to attachment and the development of early parent-child relationships. In addition, we can see that the birth weight of newborns is also important as it can be an indicator of future health outcomes. And in 2023, there was an observed increase in babies born with a low birth weight compared to the previous 5-year average, and this is an indicator that is currently being monitored. And lastly, in 2023, it was also observed that 31% of kindergarten students in Hamilton were identified as vulnerable in at least one domain of early development. This could be vulnerabilities in areas such as social and emotional development, physical health, as well as language and cognition. These potential health risks and vulnerabilities point to the importance of programs and services for pregnant individuals and families with children in the early years to support the best possible start in life. Next slide, please. The Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program works with community partners to identify individuals and families that could potentially benefit from the program. Clients that are connected and supported through the program are supported to achieve health and development goals through various home visiting services. Some examples of these services include ongoing ability to identify possible health or developmental risks, and then supporting clients with getting connected to the most appropriate resource or service in a timely way. Clients are also supported in areas such as infant feeding, such as breast or chest feeding, as well as with building parental knowledge and skills and the sharing of evidence-based information and resources. Next slide, please. The Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program focuses on supporting clients who could benefit the most from additional supports and services. These clients often face similar challenges and barriers. Some of these could include being identified as having a health risk during pregnancy, whether that be for the pregnant individual or the baby, being identified as having health or developmental concerns of the infant or child once the baby is born, as well as families who may be experiencing challenges with accessing health or social services or other essential needs such as housing, food, etc. Next slide. Over the next 2 slides, I will share with you a few of the program's activity highlights from 2025. A key feature of the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program is universal postpartum screening. This consists of the use of a standardized tool and process for all individuals who give birth in Hamilton, and Ontario for that matter, to have the opportunity to answer questions that could identify possible risk factors for the health of the parent or infant, hear about the program, and potentially be offered further follow-up if risk factors are identified. The provincial target for universal postpartum screening is 80%, and in 2025, 92% of individuals who lived and gave birth in Hamilton were screened. Of those individuals that were screened and consented for further follow-up, 557 then went on to be offered and receive long-term home visiting services through the program in 2025. These clients were supported through over 5,300 home visits. I would also like to highlight that 87 of these clients were supported through the Nurse Family Partnership Team. This team exists within the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program and provides service to first-time parents aged 24 and younger experiencing socioeconomic challenges. This team also supported their clients through over 900 visits. Next slide, please. A key component of visits with a public health nurse includes ongoing assessment to identify early any new or emerging risks and ensuring that clients are connected to resources and services in a timely way. This includes connecting both the infant or child to services to support healthy development and also connecting the parent to services to support their health and well-being, including their mental health. Next slide, please. Fulfilling the mandates and achieving the goals of the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program could not be possible without the collaboration and support of various partners. From partnerships with Hamilton's birthing hospitals, primary care and midwives, to the various health and social service agencies that support clients, including Wesley, who provides critical support through family home visitors as a key program component. Through working together, clients are supported with the various resources and services needed to meet their goals and achieve desired health outcomes. Next slide, please. In 2025, the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program made up 7% of the gross expenditures of Hamilton Public Health. Most of this budget was allocated to employee and employee-related expenses. The team is comprised of 27.5 FTE, with the majority of this FTE being the public health nurses that provide the services directly, and the remaining allocation to critical program support and leadership positions. In addition to Hamilton Public Health staff and through contractual funding, Wesley, as noted, provides 9 FTE that are allocated to the family home visitor role. Family home visitors work in collaboration with public health nurses, and their services focus on reinforcing health education and skill building and providing hands-on role modeling, coaching, and mentoring strategies with clients. Next slide, please. In 2025, the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program had some important outcomes, a few of which I will share today. Within the program, families create a service plan to identify client-centered goals and strategies to meet these goals. A key feature of these plans is a focus on building healthy and secure parent-child attachment and relationships to set the foundation for healthy growth and development. In 2025, 97% of lone parent clients achieved their attachment goals, indicating important client outcomes such as parental responsiveness and sensitivity to their child's cues and behaviors, parental ability to meet the emotional and physical needs of their child, and the development of close and secure relationships to support child development and learning. As noted as well, babies born with a healthy birth weight are associated with the ability to meet important developmental milestones. In 2025, 81% of babies born to clients within the Nurse Family Partnership team were born at a healthy birth weight, indicating a healthy start to their growth and development. And lastly, the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program also acts as a central point of access to services for children aged 0 to 3.8 who may have an identified concern with their growth and development. In 2025, 100% of children who were referred to the program for these reasons were connected with the services required to support their growth and development. Next slide, please. The Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program continually monitors program outputs and outcomes and identifies opportunities to improve services for clients. One example is showcased on this slide and is related to the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children screening that is completed during the prenatal period. Unlike the universal postpartum screening, prenatal screening is completed before the baby is born and is focused on identifying and connecting clients that are most at risk for adverse health outcomes. The goal is to connect these clients with the program and any additional services as early as possible to support optimal birth outcomes for both the pregnant individual, infant, and family. In 2016, there was an identified need to improve prenatal Healthy Babies, Healthy Children screening practices in Hamilton, as at that time, 6% of prenatal clients were being screened for the program. There was a desire among partners to increase this targeted screening to approximately 18% of the birth cohort. From 2017 to 2022, a committee of various community partners was formed and worked together to build capacity across the system for partners to identify, screen, and refer clients to the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program. By 2022, the community was meeting the locally identified target of 18%, and since then, this target has been met or exceeded, including in 2025, when 21% of prenatal clients were screened. This example of continuous improvement demonstrates the importance of partnerships and working together to achieve collective impact goals. And while the work group has since disbanded, all partners continue to work together with the program to achieve program goals of identifying and connecting clients to services early. Next slide, please. To end, I wanted to share an excerpt from a quote that we received with permission from a program client. This client identified that working with the public health nurse was an absolute delight, that she was experienced, thoughtful, and incredibly kind. From the very beginning, the nurse made them feel safe and supported, providing them with the resources and options needed without ever imposing a single right way to parent. The nurse's approach gave the family the freedom to find their own path, and with her guidance, were able to make significant strides during this time. I wanted to thank you all for your time this morning, and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation and that good news about the program. I don't see questions from folks at this time. Oh, I do see a hand raised now. I'll activate this for Councillor Wilson, and then we have Councillor Taddison and Member Kirkby. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just on the prenatal screenings or on any other metric that makes sense to provide, just wondering if the growth in kind of those KPIs that we're interested in, so seeing an increase in screenings, is that serving the same number of clients? Because it's a relative amount. So I'm just trying to understand, is it that we're seeing a decrease in births, for example, but we're still screening the same 200 people every year. And so we've kind of reached the same, just trying to understand the relative value if the number is changing every year. I'm assuming it's not a consistent number of babies being born in Hamilton every single year. And so just trying to understand if that kind of trend that looks very positive kind of keeps up, or if it kind of is showing we're serving the same number of clients every year or something else.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, appreciate the question. So yeah, that is a challenge here. I think you're looking for like absolute numbers, or really what is the denominator essentially is what you're trying to understand. So just recognizing that absolutely the number changes over time. So when we look at the number of individuals who are pregnant in a given year, then certainly that is not a consistent number. But when we look at these numbers, that is sort of factored in. And so it's more watching sort of the trend over time of, where these numbers going, and are they trending in the right direction? But certainly recognizing, to your point, that is a limitation when we don't have the year-over-year absolute number.
Thank you. And maybe just another way of framing the question, I think it's less trying to understand, is the trend still the trend, but also just like, is the limiting resource capacity? So for example, if we can serve 550 families right now, or whatever the right number is, that was the pre-screening number, but whatever the metric is, if more families were interested in participating, do we run out of the 9? Does that now hit a capacity limit with the 9 workers, versus do we still have expanded capacity with the resources we have, and making goals to continue expanding every year makes sense, versus are we we can serve the population we're serving and the numbers are changing based on the denominator, as you said. So just trying to understand if there's capacity for growth with the current resources, or if we're kind of using the resources and they're all being allocated.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor again, thank you, and appreciating the clarification around the question. And so I'm going to start, and if you need some more information around the screening piece, then I'll hand it over to Michelle to talk about that. So it is universal screening. So there's a screening tool we use, or the community essentially uses, to identify risk. And so at this point in time with our existing staff, we're able to sort of see individuals that we would consider at higher risk. And that's how we determine sort of who enters into the program. We certainly recognize that the program itself has value across the board, but given our existing or current resources, we really are at this point essentially screening and seeing the most high-risk individuals.
And so we're able to provide that number consistently, but it is a screen number. There's a eligibility requirement to get on the list, but there are no concerns about the folks who are meeting that eligibility requirement. We have the services available for them, but it's not a service available to everyone. There's a screening element to it. Thank you.
There is a screening element. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Now to Councillor Tennyson.
Thank you, Chair. Just for my own understanding, when we say a nurse partnership team, so I'm thinking that means that we have a public health nurse that leads coordination with all the other partnerships. That could be like midwives, Wesley, children protection agencies, food banks, even researchers. So is that saying that each family might have a different look of the team that's supporting them?
Through the chair to the councillor. So in terms of the nurse family partnership team specifically, that name references the partnership between the public health nurse and the client. But to provide a bit more detail more broadly in terms of the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program, I think you're correct in that each family is supported to identify their own client-centered goals and work with the nurse and family home visitor to identify what strategies may need to be put in place to support them in meeting their goals, which may therefore result in different resources and partners being involved in their care plan. So it very much is client-centered.
Okay, thank you. And then the public health nurse actually acts as a facilitator to those other agencies. It's not left up to the mother to go and get that, is it?
Through the chair to the counselor, that is correct. We work very hard with our families and partners where possible to try to ease access and reduce barriers and take on some of that case management role when working with our clients.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be writing a little bit of a report in my next e-blast on your Healthy Babies program, so that's appreciated. Thank you.
Questions or e-blast research available? Member Kirkby?
You mentioned in the report, thanks so much for the presentation, it was really great, that 92% of individuals completed the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children screen, and 557 were screened into the program. I'm just curious, just to get a sense of the scope of the issue in Hamilton, can you convert that for me in terms of like, what was the total number of people screened or the percentage of the base or the, everyone who was screened that were actually screened in, just to get a sense of, I just don't know what the denominator was, so can't tell how many, like what the percentage would be overall. You don't need to do the math right now fast if you don't.
Sorry, give us 1 second.
No problem.
Through the chair to the member, I'm just hearing that we're able to support approximately 10% of the birth cohort. So those that live and give birth in Hamilton are supported through our program.
Okay, and do we know if that reflects the need then? Like if we're able to support that, but is that of the number of people screened, everyone who is screened in gets supported? And that's 10% of everyone who gave birth in the year?
Through the chair to the member, correct. So those individuals that screen with risk will go on to further do follow-up and assessment, and those that are deemed eligible and consenting and wanted to be supported by the program are offered the ability to engage in the program and service, and we have capacity to do that.
Perfect. So in general, around 10% of individuals who give birth in Hamilton might have a need for this program or, yeah, okay, great. And then, we know these programs are so important in terms of leading to positive health outcomes and well-being later in life. I'm just wondering if we are tracking or have any indicators more long-term, like are we following any of the infants or the families from this program later in life? Have we done any of that work? Because obviously it's over time that we're going to see the results of these programs.
Through the chair to the member, that's a really great question. What I do know is that the program tracks different indicators for clients that are within our service. And so, for example, the Nurse Family Partnership team is able to support clients until their child is up to the age of 2, and they monitor different health outcomes during the course of our programming. Once a client is no longer with our program, we no longer monitor those health outcomes, but I do know that there is ongoing research with different academic institutions, such as McMaster University, for instance, has a close partnership with the Nurse Family Partnership team and engages in some of that kind of research.
Great, thanks.
Thanks very much. Now on to Member Danko.
Thank you, and through the chair, I appreciate the overview of the program. It's excellent. It clearly has very positive outcomes. My question is around whether there are any gaps in specific populations that either are not doing the prenatal screening or maybe that don't consent to participate in the program. And do we have strategies to ensure they're supported in different ways, perhaps through specific partners?
Through the chair to the member, that's a great question. And I would just highlight again the success story of our universal postpartum screening in that 97%, so nearly all individuals who live and give birth in Hamilton are participating in the screen, which is really fantastic. So all of those individuals are shared with and provided with information regarding the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program program. So should they decide to not engage in further follow-up at that time, they are all given information about the program, how to contact public health, but they're also provided with information around other critical services and supports that are available. So one example is Hamilton has a pregnancy and new parent guide, which provides a lot of information around critical resources for new families. So nearly everybody is provided with all of that information when they give birth in Hamilton.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, and we'll now turn to Member Safi.
Thank you for this. I looked at the partnership. Is there a partnership with the West Fifth, Dr. Fry, the ongoing project of their perinatal depression and anxiety disorders? I'm not sure if that's part of your partnership too.
Through the chair to the member, certainly perinatal mental health is a priority within the program, and public health nurses support clients with various screening and further assessment, and will refer to different resources and supports as needed based on identified risk factors, and would refer in the community. St. Joe's is one partner that we work with in that regard.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I don't see any further speakers on this item, and so we have a mover and seconder already. We put it on the floor, or we don't? No, we don't. I lied. Can I have a mover and seconder? Member Councillor Alex Wilson, Member Kirkby, and a show of hands to receive this information. All those in favor? That's everyone. Thank you so much. We're now on to our only item of consideration, which is amendments to the outstanding business list, everyone's favorite part of the meeting. And can I have a mover and seconder to do so? Members, I've seen them, Councillor Huang and Councillor Kassar. All those in favor of this will have an electronic vote, I believe. It's up. Member Safi is in favor, okay. And that carries 10-0. We have no motions for today's meeting. The notice of motion on today's agenda will remain a notice of motion moved by Councillor Huang, and it's there for your review should you be interested to read it. It'll come forward formally at our next meeting as a motion. I think I'm the seconder. On that note, we have the bylaws, so I need someone to move and second the proceedings of the bylaw, which we'll take as electronic vote as well. Moved by Councillor Kassar, seconded by Councillor Huang. And that'll be on your screen momentarily to confirm the proceedings of today's meeting.
Member Safi, are you in favor?
Yes, Member
Thank you.
Safi's in favor. Thank you. And that carries 10-0. There being no further business at today's meeting, it is adjourned at 11:17. Have a good day, everyone.